All right. Welcome to iTeach session. We're going to talk about metrics and analytics and how that might help you and your students be more successful. This is an e-learning event, and we have a team of instructional designers and teachers here to talk about metrics and how it might help and motivate students. I'm Heidi Olson. I'm the Learning Design Coordinator at UAF eLearning, and I'll let my colleagues here introduce themselves. Chris?
All right, I'll go first. Hi, I'm Chris Becks. I am also an instructional designer at UAF's eLearning and Distance Education.
And I'm Tina Johnson. I am also an instructional designer here at UAF eLearning.
My name is Kendall Newman Sadiq, and I am the same as the others.
And in addition to being instructional designers, we do have teaching background as well. So we can come at this, and student background as well. So we can come at this from many different directions. And we are live streaming on YouTube. And if you are watching the feed from YouTube, there is a chat capability. So please, if you have questions, if you have comments, we just ask that you use that feature and to help us participate and make this event really meaningful. Chris, you want to go ahead and start the slides?
Yeah.
And maybe go to the second slide with the short URL on it. We have a short.
This one right here.
Yes. If you want to go to the short URL, which is case sensitive, by the way, that is a page on iTeach where we have a link to the streaming feed, and we have a copy of the slide set that we're going to be showing here today, as well as some additional resources that might help you get some more ideas about how to use metrics, either for yourself or for your students. So just take note of that URL, and we'll show it again at the end. So, data, big data, metrics, analytics, it's in this digital world, there's a lot of capabilities to capture things. And certainly through working with an LMS like Blackboard or Canvas or any of them, there's opportunities that we have where we can look at the data and ask different questions about how that pertains to course design, student learning, as well as having students look at that data as well so that they can self-evaluate and think about what they're doing and how that looks compared maybe to other students, compared to their own goals, or also compared to instructor expectations. We're going to take a look now at various tools that we're all using and are readily available for faculty and students to use that have analytics component. And we're going to talk about how that works, what it looks like. And then at the end, after we look at some tools, we're going to really talk about why you might want to collect data and how to use it in a very positive way, and the capabilities that might be beneficial to you and your students when you're looking at course information. So let's go ahead and just kind of look at the list of tools on the next slide. So Google Analytics, is probably one of the most well-known and popular. We have some tools within Kaltura, which is the media component. Certainly LMS Blackboard has some analytics and metrics that we can use. Other social media like Slack, Twitter, even email, revision histories in wiki type applications. We're going to just kind of look at some of these and then talk about the benefits and how using a tool like this might be beneficial to you. So let's go ahead and get started.
All right, so Heidi mentioned Google Analytics. That might be the first thing you'd think of when you think of technology and analytics. Just put Google in front of whatever thing you're thinking of. So Google Analytics allows you to track audience and behavior on a website. You can do a little bit with email too, actually, but we were focusing on websites. So if, for example, you have a course blog for your course on WordPress, or you've got a Google site that you're using, analytics is something that you could connect to that website, and then you can see in this image that we've got on the screen, this is sort of what an analytics report looks like, and the left sidebar shows really how deep you can go. It's really about tracking audience and behavior, so you can see like where people are coming from, what times they're coming, what days, what pages they're looking at, and that can be helpful as you're thinking about, well, you know, is everyone looking at the help page regularly? And if that's the case, then maybe some of that information should be integrated elsewhere in your website, in each unit, that sort of thing. So you might, I think, you know, really, in part, this tool is sort of targeted at websites that have like a business client relationship with their audience. So things like, you know, targeting advertising is often a question. And so transferring that tool into an education context is really interesting. So, so what you might think about, right, is when are students accessing the site? That's a question you could get answered here. What particular pages are they accessing the most and the least? And then based on that information, you might say, well, do I want to try to push them to do this differently? Do I want to try to push them to access this page more than that one? Or to be looking at the site earlier than the day before the deadline of a particular assignment? You can also get more complex with Google Analytics, and you can sort of set, they've got these things called funnels and goals that you can set within your analytics. And so you could say, you know, I expect students to be taking this particular path through maybe 5 pages in the website. And analytics can help you track whether students take that path or if they drop off at a certain point. So you can think about whether they're going through a process that you expect or not. And if not, then you can ask yourself why and see if you can make some changes.
And this is available like in views of several hours to all the way to several, you know, to doing this by the month. So that may help kind of see out the course of a couple of weeks. Yeah,
you can zoom in and out on time, which is nice. It can also just be really kind of fun. It's sort of a rabbit hole if you want, but fun to look at and think about. And like we'll talk about toward the end of this and probably throughout, it's also not something to rely 100% on. I've had multiple times when I've been looking at Google Analytics and being like, this can't possibly be true. And because of imperfect data collection via, you know, just kind of dragging what they see coming across the internet, sometimes the data is distorted for one reason or another. And so, like any good scholar, you've got to be able to look at it with that kind of an eye and say, you know, is this data valuable to me, and in what way? And what else can I put next to it to understand best the story of what this is telling?
Right. For example, student time or someone's time on a page before they click off of it. You don't know what other windows they have open, or if they're getting ready to eat dinner or watching, something. So you can't, like you say, you can't always rely on it. That's great.
Yeah, there's many.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell just one story. It tells multiple possible stories, and exploring all of those is important. Not getting too tied to one and thinking about it without looking at, for example, other tools we're going to talk about.
All right, I think that's my cue. Kaltura is it's a video platform, and UAF started this semester with Kaltura as their video option, their media site. If you go to media.uaf.edu, you'll see a lot of the videos, a lot of actually e-learning videos there as well. And it's a place where you can upload videos and create new ones for use in your course, and whether that's in the Blackboard LMS or in site or any other web page or web service that you're using. You can embed video there from Kaltura. Comes with tool. Doesn't give you a lot of analytics, and maybe that's a good thing anyway as well, but it gives you at least a little bit of an insight there. Videos that you own, videos you created or you uploaded that you are the role of owner on, you can see analytics, as well as any channel. So yeah, e-learning has, for example, a Kaltura channel, a video channel there. And so there's some analytics that go for the whole channel, which is a collection of videos. And so you can see multiple video analytics for the channel there. And they can be look at any, or if you're working with any Kaltura video, you'll see the action menu button. I put a little screenshot of that there. And if you click on analytics, that will get you to the analytic page for that particular video or channel. You can drill down further into very specific users if you want to, but that we'll talk more about that towards the end of this session, about why you might want to do that or why you might that.
Hey, Chris, I have a question about that. I have a question. So with Kaltura and being able to drill down into specific users, I was under the impression that if you're doing something like taking your video and embedding it on your WordPress site, you might not get that specific content, that's really mostly available because students are signing into Blackboard to view.
That's correct. Yeah, you'll still see user, and that's why I said user/student. You'll still see user analytics, so you'll see anonymous users, and you can still see some analytics based on that. So based on the anonymous user, for that matter. But you're correct. Yeah, if your student isn't logging into the media.uaf.edu site, then obviously you can't identify the people that are watching your video.
One thing I like about this is that one of the analytics it'll show you is like when people stop watching a video, like if user 1 stops at 9 minutes, user 2 stops at 11 or whatever. And that can be helpful to look at and say to yourself, am I making my videos too
Yeah.
long?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's kind of what one of my videos, we didn't see a lot of use there, but I took a screenshot of the ones that of one of the videos I put up. General metrics here. It's not, there's like I said, this is not, but it does give you at least some information about what a single video is getting visits and how many times it's been played. The drop off, the views drop off, that's actually a percentage of how much of the video was played on average. And so, like I saw some reports that had like 70, drop off at 70%. That means that about 2/3 of the video had been played. At which point, most of the people watching the video stop watching for some reason. Give you an idea, maybe the video's too long or whatever, or maybe at some point, that's when the credits started or whatever. And then view time is really that includes scrolling. So if you if a user goes back, to a certain point in the video, that and plays and replays a certain section a few times, that's still time, viewing time, and so that gets added. So that's a little different than the previous view drop off, and then the amount of comments as well. Dashboard. There's two different metrics. Again, it's not a lot here, but just a little bit to help with that. You have in there how many times it's been viewed, and viewing is different than playing. Viewing is looking at the video, not playing the video. And then how many users have watched, how many users visited, and contributions are so that's
great. So if you, for instance, had created a short review video maybe before an exam, and perhaps your results on the exam were higher than normal, you could go back to the Kaltura analytics and see, was that video really helpful based on how many people viewed it, how long they viewed it, and you could correlate that to exam scores.
sure, yeah, you could.
So that would
Um,
tell you if it was worth your time to make that video or not.
that could be one conclusion you can make from that, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So many variables and everything, isn't there?
Right. But yes, yeah, that would you should be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. What do we have next?
That would be me. What you're looking at on the screen now is a familiar screen. It's from the Grade Center in Blackboard. And on the left is a drop-down option menu of a Grade Center column. And for any tests or quizzes, that type of assessment, you get a few options to drill down further into the results. You've got attempt statistics, item analysis, and column statistics, which each of those items provide you with a little different view of how the class or the students are doing together and individually. The the screenshot on the right is a view of the test statistics. Actually, it's the attempts statistics, and you can see that there were 36 attempts in this particular class for this exam, and the correct answers, the percentages. It allows you just to drill down with each question and see how well the students did for the individual questions. It's good information in terms of evaluating your questions and understanding what the students know. And the next screen, I believe, is the column statistics. And it's a little different view. You can see the statistics for, the possible points are there and how many participants. You can even see that there was one that didn't participate, and then an average grade distribution of the student grades, based from, I highlighted all the participating students from down to 50% up to 100. And it's a small class, but it's just a good example of a visual for this particular option in the Grade Center. You can also toggle through. You can use the drop down, and like you can with any other option inside the Grade Center, and move around. In the next screen, and anything you guys have to add here, please chime in. I think it's
Item analysis.
yeah, item analysis. And that is another feature that allows you to view test performance and evaluate and improve your questions. It's a little report that you actually have to run when you click on the option in the Grade Center column. And it shows you the average scores, how long a student was actually in the quiz. Blackboard even evaluates whether your questions are good, and lets you know if there's a review for a particular question recommended. So I'm not sure exactly how they determine that. I don't know if it's time spent answering the question or just it's got a 90% down there for difficulty, and so that's flagged in that particular screen. So, or for this course.
I think it has to do with how many correct answers you receive on that question, as well as how long average students took to answer the question as well.
Okay.
And if that is indeed the last question on the quiz, that may skew that a little bit too. But that's the two factors that I think.
Yeah, I was questioning it a little bit because of the average score numbers. So, but it's good information. It's interesting, I think. If you've got 50 questions in a quiz, it's a little more time consuming, but it's something to consider.
One thing that I like about the item analysis is that it does gives you a report by question, and you can filter out different question types. So, if you have a mix of true and false, multiple choice, and essay, you can actually drill down and filter out the specific questions that you're interested in, and just get a more thorough analysis. And this might be a good place. I know a lot of programs have sort of professional testing that they have to do for their associations. And so some of the tests, I mean, they're standardized tests for the profession. And this might be a good place to evaluate how well your students and you are prepping for that standardized test.
Yeah.
And maybe
Yeah, that's
where,
exactly what this was designed to
yeah, but again, you know, a lot of these tools are looking, you know, they're very quantitative and not qualitative. So you can't just you can't just go with the numbers. You have to think about what that actually means for you and your students. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And the content in your course, you know, how
Right.
relative is it? Yeah.
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 So what about course reports?
Course reports. Course reports are available under the evaluation option in the course management control panel area for instructors. And there are there's a pretty long list of available course report types. I've got a little screenshot there of a few. This can be, you can go into, like, for example, the first link that I have there, all user activity. I just pulled a few students out of the mix of the rest of them and ran a report on their activity. And the second link, I chose to run a complete overall summary report for all activity in the course. So the first report is shorter, much shorter than the second one, and they have different uses, but the information is pretty thorough. It shows, you know, the all user activity, 81 hits for the assignments in the content area, and 3 hits on the syllabus. I think I pulled for this report about a 10-day time frame in March, earlier in March, right before spring break. So it's not like a full semester or a long period of time. So all user activity inside content areas, it breaks it down even further with assignments and resources. There's some activity, the syllabus again, and then, you know, a total of hits, so to speak, time spent. It shows us the actual days students were inside of the content areas, a graph, how long, I believe. So I know that in the 2 reports that we're looking at right now today, most of the students have done their homework or spent some time in Blackboard, primarily on Thursdays and Fridays, which is interesting. But it lets you know when your students are in there doing their work, how much time. And this is pretty much the same, you know, amount of hits and inside the content areas. So it's just a different view. And I think go on to the next one. Is this the last page? It is. Okay, yeah. This long report is a little overwhelming because it breaks down every area. And it shows you that, you know, students spent most of the time in the discussion board area and the content item areas and announcements. So some an email and the Grade Center. So that's where they're hanging out. And again, the hits on the announcement page, it just tells you, that's what they look at first and foremost, most likely. It's they log into the course and read the announcements. And again, content item numbers, my grades. So you could see where students are. And you can do this, like I said, for a week, for a day, for the whole semester. And
you can do it by student, right?
yes.
So if you have some at-risk students, you could get a more in-depth analysis of where they are spending time.
Yeah, exact days they were working and what time, where they went. Yeah, everything. Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah. So another report that is in that same area under evaluations in your control panel is the retention center. And we didn't include that here just because of time, but when I was thinking about the at-risk students, that retention center is really powerful because you can set criteria for certain behaviors you're looking for. And when students hit that criteria, it will notify you instead of you having to kind of keep an eye on it. So if you do have a really large class and you want to set certain behaviors that you're looking for, you can do that through the retention center, and that tool will help monitor that for you. So anytime you can get the LMS to do some work for you,
Yeah.
I think is worth looking into.
Yeah, there's a wide variety of filters in there.
Yeah.
For options. Yep.
Yeah, and you do that for all students, or just for example, like Heidi mentioned, just at-risk students. And yeah, there's a large option for customization there.
And the initial investment of your time trying to figure it out, there is a learning curve, but once you have some ideas of what is useful to you, then you can apply that across the board on all your classes. And if you find something that is really killer and really effective, then you can let us know, and we can share that out to other faculty, so you can be the analytic mentor. So let's move away from Blackboard for a minute and the LMS, and let's talk about some other kind of social media tools.
So Slack is a group chat tool, and a lot of people will use it in their workplace. Maybe your department uses it. We have a few different classes that have started using Slack as sort of a discussion forum, an alternative discussion forum. And there's lots of good reasons to do that, and there's lots of reasons you might not want to, and that's a separate discussion. If it is something that you're using, one of the nice things about it is that it has these nice, pretty simple, pretty basic statistics that it'll offer you through the admin panel. So it's mostly metrics of participation, and a discussion forum is generally a space where that's what you're looking for. So it's when are people posting to the forum? When are people reading the forum? I think you can look at, readers versus writers. You can also look at the post, so there's different spaces you can post in, and there's sort of 3 levels of public. So you can post to the whole group, you can post to a private group, and then you can have a direct message with someone. That can be an interesting thing to look at. For example, if you're trying to think about whether students are making connections with one another individually in your online class. I've been working with a developmental English class where that's one of the goals, that students connect to each other outside of even the big forum. And so that's a metric we can use to try to figure out if that's happening. Yeah, it can be pretty helpful. So with the free account, you get some basic statistics, and then with the paid account, you can drill down into specific users in your course. So you might be able to see that Miriam hasn't posted in 2 weeks, and maybe something's going on with her, and you should get in touch, or whatever. That's not a good enough reason to pay for an account, but if you had a paid account, that would be a nice perk.
Another social media is Twitter. And they found this Google Sheets add-on for a Twitter archiver. And my main purpose as I use this as a student was to, I wanted to actually have an archive of certain tweets that had a hashtag, a specific hashtag. And as you know, with Twitter, the tweets will go away at some point. So I wanted to have a way to archive the story behind this hashtag. So I played with this Twitter archiver, and what this archiver actually gave me was an archive of the tweets, but it also gave me just some interesting information about who was following my tweet, this certain hashtag, where, if it was being retweeted or not, if it was being favorited, and then kind of who those users were. So I had some users who were actually paying attention to me that had a huge following. So that was, that as a student, that sort of gave me some confidence that I was saying something interesting. And so from a student side, it was really interesting to see where these were going and how they were being viewed. So I have an example there, and then a resource. We don't need to look at those now, but they are there for your review. And as I was thinking about add-ons for Google products, I came across another analytic tool that you could use with the Google Doc, and it actually, yeah, so you're seeing sort of the archiver there, Twitter archiver resource. So if we go to the next slide, I was so I was thinking about collaborative documents and how those are being used in classes, and I found this revision history analytics that is another add-on for Google Docs, and it actually analyzes. It looks at the revision history and creates some graphs for you. If you want to go to slide 16, Chris. So it gives you just a snapshot of, how many words collaborators are adding, total comments. So that's based on adding a sidebar comment. Total interactions would be the conversation that's happening in those comments, and then total edits. And you can break it down by user. And I just thought that was interesting, because a lot of times, when we're looking at peer evaluation, We want to see what's happening as far as interactions going. And then with this revision history analytics tool, you get some more specifics instead of having to go page by page through the revision history. So I thought that was a pretty interesting add-on for Google Docs. That certainly, you could definitely use as a teacher, or even have your students look to see if they are participating as much as they think they are.
Yeah, I like that add-on. That's really cool. I can definitely see teachers using that.
Heidi, I like that you've sort of turned the conversation toward not only you as a teacher looking at analytics, but also encouraging your students to look at analytics and thinking about drawing stories and inferences out of the data that you're collecting about your class. And doing things like thinking about, right, there's a lot of questions that can branch off of that activity. So, this in Twitter, right, like this particular tweet is getting so much attention. Why do you think that's happening? What's going on in this tweet that it's getting that attention? Is it, like, what are the hashtags? Who else is being tagged in it? What makes a tweet successful? And same for Google Docs, I agree, especially for group work. So thinking about, well, what does and doesn't this say about how we work as a group or as a pair? I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think, what really struck me is in public speaking, when someone is paying attention to your ums and ahs, and you realize that you're doing that, but when you actually see the numbers, then it has a bigger impact. So if you can see what the data looks like, sometimes that can be a real teaching moment or a learning moment.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. Yeah.
That's me. So we spent a little bit of time, the four of us, thinking ahead to what we were going to do today, clearly, since we came with slides. And one thing that came up was whether there was any way to look at email. You get a lot of email from students, probably, and from others. You might have email habits, or your students have email habits that irk you. The common one, right, would be the 10 p.m. request for an extension the night before something is due, or request for feedback the night before something is due. So there are a few different ways that you might use email and an analytical look at email behavior for yourself or for your course. So for yourself, Chris Becks pointed out this kind of fun, like thrilling little tool you can use called Gmail Meter. You can go to Gmail Meter, sign up, and it will draw a sort of month's report about your email activity. So when are you sending emails, what days, what times, how quick are you to respond? You can see mine was 10 hours. A lot of us seem to have that kind of a response time, and we decided they were counting overnight and weekends when we're usually not working. But something like response time is an important analytic to think about for you as a teacher. How long is it taking you to get back to students? It'll also give you a drill down into the top 10 people you're emailing with. And so you could say, if 4 of them are students, what's your response time on students versus colleagues? Just kind of an interesting, it's kind of a fun thing to look at. It's pretty simple and interesting, and it might be something that helps you think about your behavior and you know, is this reflecting how you want to be using email? Do you want to use email less with students? Do you not want students to show up in your top 10? Is there a different medium that you think students should be using? Or, you know, do you need to tell your mom to stop emailing you at 6 a.m.? That's when mom does. Yeah. So lots of questions to be asked and answered based on this kind of a report. We also sort of thought about email and how you might use analytics from email in your course. So that's the next slide. Class behavior. So this is a little bit more of a DIY process. There's not a quick, or maybe there is, and you're gonna tell us what it is. But we didn't find a quick add-on for thinking about this, but thought, you know, you could apply a filter, and that's something you can do in the settings of your email, and filter out all emails for a particular class, or relatively well filter them out. And then you might predefine some labels that you'd put on those incoming emails. So is this a tech question from a student? Is it an attendance or scheduling issue? Is it, you might set those parameters in advance. And then periodically go in and look, well, am I getting, you know, mostly tech questions from students? Like, why aren't they getting this piece? What can I do to create something that doesn't require me to respond with a screenshot of Google Docs once a day? What's not quite connecting for people? So that could be interesting. Another opportunity is to use the canned response feature. That's also in settings. Is it called an add-on? You guys, it's in settings. It's called something. It's like experimental tool. Anyways, canned responses. What is it?
It's a labs feature.
For email, yeah.
A labs feature. I knew it was, I was close with experiment. It's a labs feature. And canned responses lets you create like a template response. So if you realize that you're constantly getting the same tech question, and the best way to respond to it is via email, you can create a template response so that when that email comes in, you just click a button, you get your response, you do a little bit to customize it, and you send it off. So it can help you shift the time and ways that you're using email, as well as try to guide your students toward similar best practice type behavior.
And help you be more efficient in the meantime.
Yes. Efficiency. It's me again. I chose this background color for my slides that I thought was like a light orange, but now it's looking to me like a weird peachy flesh. I'm not enjoying it.
It's coral.
It's coral. Okay, that's nice.
Coral.
So, yeah, coral's a nicer way to think about it. I think I've been staring at it long enough that it looks like someone's belly. So Google Forms you can use to customize the data you're collecting. And it means you're surveying students directly, or maybe not students, maybe you would use it for something else, and asking them for feedback or for information about themselves that you might use to think about what you're doing in your course. So this image on the left, the Dev 109 course survey, this is a survey that students in a developmental English class are filling out twice over the course of the semester. And trying to track, you know, so there's a bunch of questions about comfort level with writing, comfort level with grammar, comfort level with being in a college classroom. So trying to track, is change happening? over time. So that's one way of doing it. The same instructor also uses a mid-course survey that is basically, what should we do more of, what should we do less of, what's working just fine. And so you can gather basic feedback from your students midway through to say, oof, I really should stop posting these 15-minute long videos for them to watch. They don't want more of it. And then in the, when you create a form, you've got your create tab, and then you've also got a responses tab. And the responses tab obviously aggregates all the responses, and it also turns it into a pie chart if you want a pie chart, or other kinds of charts. It makes it easy to do charts, which is nice. And then again, you know, as Heidi was saying, that her Twitter tool and the Google Docs add-on can be great tools for students to use. Forms can be great tools for students to use too, to gather and look at and play around with data.
Yeah, yeah. Google Forms. I know several instructors are using them, or having their students use them to submit some complicated. Just because it allows for a combination of questions like this, as well as some file uploads, and then doing, you know, your responses and gaining some analytics all in the same action or the same assignment. And there's pros and cons to both doing it that way, or doing it, for example, just you know, with a single action or a single paper. But yeah, I'm seeing several instructors doing that. So so there's lots of options with Google Forms, and getting different ways to gain insights into maybe just a single assignment, as well as, you know, like a course survey will for a whole course.
Cool. One of our site fellow projects in 13, Ruth Prado, thought that she was teaching accounting, and she had her advanced counting students keep track of their grades, how much sleep they were getting, their calorie intake, and their exercise, with the idea that, you know, the more sleep, the more, or the moderate calories and good exercise regime would result in better grades. And so she had students collecting this information individually throughout the weekend, not throughout the semester, and then the information was all put together through a Google Sheet, and then the students did some advanced analysis at the end. And she said that the students really got to understand that it was important to have a balance, and it did improve, for most students, it did improve their grades. So I thought that was a really good way to use data and analytics, and using through Google Forms.
I was really sort of hoping that you were going to say that there were really surprising results, and not getting enough. Eating popcorn for dinner is fine.
Popcorn, but just no butter.
Olive oil.
Olive oil, right. Or, yeah, popcorn, but not the case of beer that goes with it.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Well, Heidi, that's not the olive oil or the popcorn, but Heidi's earlier comment is actually a pretty good segue into what's next, and looking at and then understanding and actually analyzing and then going from there.
It also looks like we've only got about 5 minutes, so maybe we can zip through to to just kind of point you in the directions you might ask questions.
Yeah. Yeah, we spent a lot of, well, we talked about some of this as we were going through the tools, you know, but how do you use this information, this data with your students, you know, to look at your activities and assessments and how you might make revisions, using maybe some of the tools that Tina talked about in Blackboard, you know, as a course as a whole. I think if we maybe go to slide 22, I think that this is something Kendall added, and not that one, right?
Yeah, I
Sorry.
added this.
There you go.
This came up a few times in our conversations as we were planning this session, but just feeling like we don't want to push anyone toward gathering analytics that allows you to see who's the lazy, which is not even a full sentence. So, but I pulled these two screenshots from, the top one is from Slack, and it's at the bottom of their analytics page, and then this bottom one was from the Google Docs tool. But sort of two different frames for how to look at analytics, right? The Slack advice is, don't take this to mean only one thing. Don't understand these analytics to be saying that one of your employees or students is being lazy. Take it to mean that there's something happening here that that you might look into, that you might check in on. Really, a lot of these analytics are opportunities to follow up and ask for what is the story? What is the story that's happening here? Why, you know, are you having trouble in the class because like you attempted this one question 5 times and it was a really simple one? Like, no, your computer just crashed 4 times or whatever. So making sure that you don't allow students to become numbers or the analytics to pretend to tell a fuller story than they do. They're really just meant to point you in a direction. Chris, you actually had a really good framing of this. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I think so analytics can tell a trend, and you really should look, I think, at here in most of the examples we've shown. It's hard to just pinpoint a particular. That's what that says. You know, it could be that it's student related. It could be that it's related to you or your course. It's not necessarily that your students are doing something because they don't understand it, like they don't get a concept maybe, or because the question, or maybe it was because you skipped over a certain part in your lesson or something like that. There could be, you know, just because you have an analytical number or a metric that shows you something, it doesn't really give you the reason. There could be multiple reasons for an analytic to show up in a certain way. You know, just because your students are answering, you know, are doing their homework at 10 o'clock at night before, you know, the next day's class, is that because they're procrastinating, or is that because you know, gave them too much work, for example? Or, I mean, there's a whole, you know, that's a kind of a simplistic way, but there's multiple ways of looking at this, and tendency is often, well, that's because the students do this, when you don't necessarily have to look at it that way. You know, your students are in your class, they sign up for your class, they want to be in your class. Maybe there's more to it, and I think, and we talked about that throughout the past hour, that there's more to it than just a number, and that points to a certain cause.
Great. Well, It's 1 o'clock, so we'll wrap up. All of these resources are available on iTeachU at iteachu.uaf.edu/presentations. The recorded video that we did just now, as well as these slides, are both available there. And of course, we are all always available to talk to you about any of this and to hear what you have to say, hear how you use these kinds of tools and data in your courses. So.
Absolutely. And if you are ready for more, we have open labs 3 times a week. Even through the summer semester, we'll have open labs scheduled. We have iTeach Plus events like this, either virtually through a Hangout or face-to-face in our offices in the Bunnell building. We have various more intense workshop, seminar classes called iTeach Online or iTeach Advanced. We're continually trying to add more opportunities for professional development. So please go to this site, iteachu.uaf.edu/events, to see a whole list of calendar, to see a list of all of our events and to find out when they are. And if you have questions or comments, you can go to this website and leave send us an email there. And hopefully we all have taken something away from this session that can help us, or at least give us some good things to think about. So thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.